Let's start with our first news. Jon Jones has just offered some massive praise for Khamzat, making the bold claim that the middleweight powerhouse could potentially beat anyone on the UFC roster if he enters the Octagon with the right mindset. Jones even took the compliment a step further, suggesting that Khamzat has the raw talent, physical strength, and sheer ferocity to defeat reigning heavyweight champion Tom Aspinall. That is an incredible statement, coming from someone who knows exactly what it takes to compete at the highest level of the sport. According to Jones, if Khamzat walks into a fight with the right mental attitude, there may not be a single fighter in the UFC capable of stopping him. Jones also reflected on his own prime, explaining why he believes he was considered one of the absolute best fighters in the world. He pointed to his dynamic kickboxing, explosive wrestling, dangerous submissions, cardio, physical strength, and confidence as the qualities that made him such a dominant champion. However, Jones admitted that he is no longer in his prime and is approaching 40 years old. Despite that, he still believes Khamzat is a serious problem for anyone who steps inside the octagon with him. Jones made it clear that he has tremendous respect for Khamzat, saying that he is grateful to be both his friend and his fan. The praise comes at a time when Khamzat's next fight remains uncertain. During a recent public appearance, Khamzat was asked about his highly anticipated return and bluntly told the crowd that nobody wants to fight him, leaving him wondering what he should do next. His team has reportedly been pushing for a rematch with Sean Strickland, but that fight is still far from guaranteed. If the rematch fails to materialize, Khamzat could potentially move up to the light heavyweight division sooner than expected. One possible option could be a matchup with Paulo Costa, although nothing has been officially confirmed. For now, Khamzat remains one of the most feared fighters in the UFC, and with Jon Jones backing him to potentially defeat even a heavyweight champion like Tom Aspinall, the hype surrounding his future has reached another level. Let's move on to other news. As the UFC welterweight division continues to become more crowded, Carlos Prates is already looking far beyond his next fight. The Brazilian contender has his eyes set on becoming champion, and he already knows exactly who he wants to face if he captures the belt. Prates has now called out Ilia for the second time, making it clear that he would welcome the former champion to the welterweight division. In a recent interview, Prates explained that if he manages to win the welterweight title, Ilia would be his preferred opponent for his first title defense. With Ilia repeatedly discussing the possibility of moving up to 170 pounds, Prates believes the matchup could be a perfect opportunity for both fighters. Prates essentially sent a simple message. If Ilia decides to move up, he will be waiting for him. The Brazilian contender even joked about welcoming Ilia to the wild race of the welterweight division. Despite the call-out, Prates made it clear that there is no personal animosity between them. He described Ilia as a good guy and a nice person, emphasizing that any potential fight would simply be business. From Prates' perspective, the matchup could potentially be promoted as a massive super fight, or it could serve as a straightforward title defense if Ilia makes the move to welterweight. Of course, Prates still has plenty of work to do before that opportunity becomes a reality. He first needs to continue climbing the rankings and eventually capture the championship. Meanwhile, Ilia's future at welterweight remains one of the most interesting storylines in the UFC. After establishing himself as one of the sport's elite fighters, a move up in weight could create some huge matchups. If Prates eventually becomes champion and Ilia follows through with his plans to move up, the two could find themselves on a collision course. For now, Prates is making his intentions very clear. He wants the welterweight belt, and if Ilia comes looking for a new challenge at 170 pounds, Prates says he will gladly be there to welcome him with a title defense. Let's move on to other news. A potential matchup between Ilia and Chenko is generating some serious buzz, and former UFC champion Demetrious Johnson has now shared his thoughts on the intriguing possibility. The matchup was recently discussed as a fight that could be extremely interesting to watch, especially because of the unique stylistic contrast between the two fighters. According to Demetrious, the fight makes a lot of sense from a competitive standpoint. Ilia is coming off a difficult loss to Justin Gaethje, and with several options available to him in the lightweight division, his next move could have a major impact on the championship picture. While there are already plenty of big fights available for Ilia at 155 pounds, Demetrius believes a clash with Chenko would be a particularly fascinating test. The main reason is the combination of their skill sets. Ilia has established himself as one of the most dangerous power punchers in the sport. His ability to generate explosive power and end fights at any moment makes him a threat against virtually anyone in the lightweight division. On the other side, Chenko brings a completely different set of qualities into the octagon. His technical abilities, overall skill set, and ability to compete at a high level could create some serious problems for Ilia. That contrast is exactly what makes the potential matchup so intriguing. Demetrius believes the combination of Ilia's devastating power and Chenko's technical skills could produce a fight that fans would be genuinely excited to watch. At 155 pounds, the division is already packed with elite contenders and potential blockbuster matchups. However, this particular fight could stand out because of the different approaches both fighters would bring into the octagon. For Ilia, it would be another opportunity to prove himself against a highly skilled opponent and begin rebuilding his momentum following his loss to Justin Gaethje. For Chenko, facing a fighter with Ilia's power would represent an enormous challenge and potentially the biggest opportunity of his career. Nothing has been officially confirmed yet, but the idea is clearly gaining attention. If the fight eventually comes together, it could deliver an explosive stylistic battle and become one of the most talked about matchups in the lightweight division. Let's move on to other news. Jon Jones has once again shared his thoughts on a potential matchup with Alex Pereira, and the former UFC heavyweight champion remains confident that his wrestling and physical strength would have given him a major advantage inside the octagon. In a recent interview with Alf Global, Jones explained that he believes his physical strength would have been too much for Pereira to handle. According to Jones, the biggest difference between them would have come when the fight moved to the ground. Jones believes that if he had managed to take Pereira down, his submission game could have ended the fight very quickly. The former champion pointed to his wrestling as the clear path to victory against Pereira, suggesting that once the fight reached the mat, he would have had multiple opportunities to control the Brazilian and look for a submission. Jones essentially believes that Pereira's greatest strength is his striking, while his own advantage would have been his ability to mix wrestling with his physical strength and world-class grappling. For years, fans have debated what would happen if these two UFC legends ever shared the octagon. Pereira has established himself as one of the most dangerous strikers in MMA, while Jones built his legacy by becoming one of the most complete fighters in UFC history. A matchup between them would have created an incredible clash of styles. However, Jones made it clear that this is now simply a hypothetical discussion. The two fighters are not scheduled to compete against each other, and Jones emphasized that he has nothing but respect for Pereira. Despite believing he would have beaten Pereira, Jones said that he is actually a fan of the Brazilian star. He expressed his support for Pereira and said that he wants to see him continue to succeed. That respectful attitude adds an interesting layer to the rivalry that never happened. Jones may be confident that his wrestling and submissions would have been too much for Pereira, but the matchup will always remain one of MMA's biggest what-ifs. Had these two elite fighters ever met at the right time, it could have produced one of the most highly anticipated fights in UFC history. Let's move on to other news. Conor has once again grabbed attention online after appearing to jokingly blame the UFC's entrance production for the injury that disrupted his latest fight plans. In a recent Instagram post, Conor seemed to suggest that the smoke machines and dry ice used during his entrance somehow made the octagon floor slippery, leading to the moment when his knee reportedly popped. The post was clearly written in a humorous and sarcastic tone, with Conor joking that the cage floor had become wet because of the dry ice. He even suggested that the fight should now be considered a no contest and jokingly told the champion to prepare for his return. Conor followed up by responding to his own post, continuing the joke and insisting that everything had felt effortless before the injury. However, his next message took a much more serious tone. The former UFC champion opened up about the amount of work he had put into preparing for his comeback, explaining that it was disheartening to invest so much time and effort without getting the opportunity to truly compete. At the same time, Conor appeared to look at the situation from a more positive perspective. He suggested that the work he had already put in was not wasted, and that his injury simply meant he was being called upon to show even more discipline, growth, and commitment. He ended the message by expressing gratitude and saying that he had no problem with the challenge ahead. The comments immediately attracted attention from fans, especially because Conor's career has been filled with unexpected twists and unpredictable moments. His latest posts appear to show a fighter trying to stay positive while dealing with another frustrating setback. The jokes about the UFC's production may simply be Conor's way of keeping things light during a difficult period. Of course, fans will now be watching closely to see what happens next. If Conor can stay focused, continue his recovery, and maintain the discipline he spoke about, his comeback story could still have another chapter. For now, though, the UFC superstar remains one of the most unpredictable personalities in combat sports, and with Conor, you truly never know what is going to happen next. Let's move on to other news. Undefeated welterweight contender Michael Morales has reportedly confirmed that he will be making his next trip to the Octagon, with UFC 333 now appearing to be the target event for his highly anticipated return. Morales recently took to social media and mentioned the date of the upcoming UFC event, letting fans know that he is expected to compete when the promotion heads to Philadelphia. While the UFC has not officially announced his opponent yet, multiple reports are pointing toward a massive matchup with Yaroslav Amosov. Amosov is currently in the United States, which is something he typically does when he is deep into a training camp and preparing for an upcoming fight. That has only fueled speculation that the former champion could be the man standing across from Morales. Morales has since doubled down on his plans to compete at the event, and reports suggest the promotion could officially announce the matchup very soon. If confirmed, this would be an absolute blockbuster for the welterweight division. Morales enters the potential matchup with a flawless 19-0 professional record, while Amosov is known for his elite grappling and well-rounded skill set. However, another possible opponent has also been discussed. Carlos Prates has rapidly climbed the welterweight rankings and could potentially be in the mix after his dominant victory over JDM. That possibility has also caught the attention of Bisping, who recently discussed some of the rumored fights being considered for the division. Bisping admitted that he had no official confirmation regarding a potential matchup between Prates and Morales, but he had seen the rumors circulating online. With major fights involving Ian Garry and Islam Makhachev also shaping the welterweight division, the UFC could be looking to stack the event with other top contenders. The strategy would make sense. If one of the main fighters suffers an injury or is forced to withdraw during training camp, having another elite contender ready to step in could save the card. But if Morales and Prates actually end up fighting, Bisping believes it would be a fight worth watching. He described both men as two of the most devastating strikers in the welterweight division, with incredible knockout power and enormous physical frames. And if that matchup becomes official, fans could be in for an explosive showdown. Let's move on to other news. Team Khabib member Josh Thompson has sparked a major debate by suggesting that Ilia is simply too small to build a long-term career in the UFC lightweight division. Speaking about the current 155-pound landscape, Thompson argued that Ilia should consider moving back down to featherweight, where he could potentially dominate the division for years instead of facing the much larger natural lightweights. According to Thompson, Ilia could struggle against physically stronger opponents, particularly fighters like Arman, who he believes would have a major advantage in wrestling, grappling, physical strength, and overall size. Thompson specifically suggested that Arman could potentially outmuscle and overpower Ilia if the two ever met inside the Octagon. He also pointed toward other large lightweight contenders, arguing that Ilia could take unnecessary damage by remaining at 155 pounds. Thompson's solution is simple. Move back down to 145 pounds, reclaim the featherweight championship, and potentially become a long-reigning champion. However, fans on social media have been quick to push back against this argument, reminding everyone that Ilia has already proven himself at lightweight. When Ilia moved up to face Charles Oliveira for the vacant lightweight title at UFC 317, he was stepping into the cage against one of the most dangerous submission specialists in UFC history. Oliveira had an elite grappling pedigree and a natural size advantage, but that advantage ultimately made no difference. Ilia managed to defend against the grappling exchanges, reverse a takedown attempt, and then deliver a devastating first-round knockout. That performance immediately silenced many doubts about whether Ilia could compete with larger lightweight fighters. Thompson still believes Ilia would be better served by returning to featherweight, where he could potentially dominate the division and build an even greater legacy. He also suggested that Ilia could always attempt another run at lightweight later in his career, perhaps when he is older and physically more developed. Meanwhile, Demetrious Johnson has also shown interest in a potential lightweight matchup involving Ilia and Magomed, adding even more intrigue to Ilia's future at 155 pounds. For now, the debate continues, but one thing is clear. Ilia has already shown that counting him out because of his size could be a very dangerous mistake.